Debbie, let's bring you in because you've got some very interesting analysis here on GB News, which of course has become very big in the minds of a lot of people.
Yeah, well, what's the definition of a polebrity? That's my new word. That's my new buzzword. So I just wanted to, these are going to be fairly quick slides because it's going to be a reminder for many people already. But looking at the funding of GB News, so already somebody's put in a freedom of information to Ofcom asking about their funding. And basically Ofcom said, yes, they do hold the information, but they're not actually obliged to disclose it. So to check their investors page, which of course we've done before. And but before we look at their investors page, I need to look at an article that was printed in the Press Gazette Future of Media just prior to the deal being struck. But here you can see a Dubai-based investment group and pro-Brexit investor amongst £60 million funders to back GB News. So let's see if that actually came true, because the Dubai-based investment group was Legatum and the pro-Brexiteer hedge fund billionaire was Sir Paul Marshall. And sure, if you go to the GB News investors page, you can see there that we've got Legatum and Sir Paul Marshall. Sir Paul Marshall, who's a businessman, a philanthropist. He's also the co-founder and chair of ARC Schools. And he started the Marshall Institute, but we'll come on to that maybe in Extra. It gets even more interesting in Extra. So please hold with us for Extra. So go to the government page and look at Sir Paul Marshall. And yes, we've got one. And it clearly says that he's chairman and chief investment officer of Marshall Wace LLP, one of Europe's leading hedge fund groups. He's also founding trustee of ARC, the children's charity, and chairman of ARC Schools. So let's go to Legatum very quickly. And we'll see Legatum's website because they are one of the primary investors. They're a global firm with a portfolio of investments. And then when we go further into Legatum, we can see that they are tied up to the Luminos Fund. The Luminos Fund gives children excluded from school due to poverty, discrimination, or conflict a second chance for mainstream education. So let's look at the Luminos Fund. And there we can see you've got Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, you've got the Lego Foundation, and plenty of other organisations. Now, if we just go back to GB News and look at their presenters, we can see already that this is a husband and wife team, Esther McVey, politician, and Philip Davis. They were investigated by Ofcom for a possible breach of impartiality when they interviewed Jeremy Hunt. And then I went to look at the presenters on GB News, and I've done a little screenshot for you just to see a few of the political. This is why I call them polebrities, because they seem to have become celebrities. The ones that I've highlighted in blue are not actually sitting members of parliament, obviously, like Nigel Farage and Gloria De Piero and Arlene Foster, who was the leader of the DUP. But clearly you can see there that Esther McVey and Jacob Rees-Mogg are both sitting parliamentarians with their own shows. And we've also got another politician in the mix quite heavily with GB News, which is Lee Anderson. And he's scheduled to become the latest Tory MP to host a show of his very own on GB News. So let's just go and look at the figures here, because these are politicians who earn, £80,000 for an MP, and they're meant to be serving their constituents and public service. So when I went to look at the register of members' financial interests, and these are the latest ones, this is Lee Anderson. And you can see there, I'll let you freeze the screen, but you can see from the 1st of March 2023 until further notice, he will receive £100,000 per annum, paid monthly for 8 hours a week work. And he is a sitting politician. So let's fast forward on to Esther McVey and look at the same. And there's quite a big chunk there to digest. But the one highlighted in yellow at the bottom says that she received £3,166.66. I'll leave you to comment perhaps on the amount for 4 episodes. And then if you look back, you can see she received 14,000 for 17 episodes, which were equated to 42 hours work. So let's look at Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's got his own programme pretty much every night. And you can see this is a very generous salary for a sitting politician. And he seems to be receiving around £30,000 every month for 40 hours work. That's a lot of money. That's just under £400,000 a year. That is far in excess of what he would earn as a politician. And of course, he's a journalist for other publications as well. So the GB News are also, they seem to be splashing the cash a bit because they've now got eyes on the Spectator. So a £50 million deal, Paul Marshall, who we've just spoken about, he seems to be circling like some kind of vulture for the Spectator. And also City AM are carrying that story too, about how that the Spectator is probably going to be swallowed up because the Barclay family have been in trouble. But that's a bigger story altogether. And just to finish this segment, I just want to take people back to the Spectator, because James Forsyth, who is now no longer political editor of the Spectator, James Forsyth has moved to Downing Street and now has become Rishi Sunak's personal advisor. Now, James Forsyth is not just Rishi Sunak's personal advisor. He's his best friend. He's godparents to his children. I mean, the relationship is very close. And James Forsyth is married to Allegra Stratton, who first broke the whole Partygate thing. So this thing with GB News and the Spectator, there's more on the Spectator to come, but you can see how intricate it is. And why are politicians earning so much money to present on television? That's my big question. Celebrity.
That's because Parliament is redundant. There's nothing happening in the House of Parliament. Everything else is being done through the think tank, Sheffield University, and direct from the media outside it.
Indeed, you know, being an MP is supposed to be a full-time job, but Jacob Rees-Mogg still has time to work 40 hours on. But anyway, let's just look at the Ofcom statement that they made a couple of days ago on this issue of celebrities. Viewers and listeners are at the centre of what we do, says Ofcom. To ensure our broadcasting rules remain relevant and effective, it's important for us to understand firsthand what people think and feel about the TV and radio content they consume and how perspectives might change over time. The rules around politicians presenting programmes were first introduced in 2005. Given the rise in the number of current affairs programmes presented by sitting politicians and recent public interest in this issue, we're conducting research to gauge current audience attitudes towards these programmes. So for the sake of clarity here, they're not going to change anything immediately. They're just asking people what people think about this. So the rules currently state that an MP cannot serve as a newsreader, interviewer or reporter on a news programme, but they are allowed to host current affairs programmes. And so a news programme, as far as Ofcom is concerned, is a programme which features a presenter speaking directly to the audience, running a list of stories and the use of reporters and correspondents and a mix of video items. So apparently Jacob Rees-Mogg's programme on GB News is not actually a news programme. But anyway, so I just want to end with Dan Wootton here, because he's saying, why have you never had this to Ofcom? Why have you never, or to Nick Robinson rather, talking about the Ofcom report, why have you never had a problem when for years LBC allowed the likes of David Lammy and Angela Rayner to host regular shows? I guess it doesn't matter when they're Labour frontbenchers. Yet another example of bias from GB News hitting British bashing corporation. Well, yeah, okay, but you know, my personal view is that no MP should be involved in pushing out their propaganda on any news channel.
Absolutely.